Antigua, like most other Caribbean islands, are extremely vulnerable to tsunamis. We inherited a model of development as we moved into independence from the UK, most of us, where the focus was developing the coastline, whether this was for tourism or for shipping, that is a fact. I think we're at a stage now where we need to make a decision to review and to deal with that issue of building on top of existing vulnerability, more critical facilities, more important infrastructure, and to make a deliberate effort to remove critical facilities out of harm's way over time, because this is going to be quite costly. And so with that vulnerability comes the need for ownership. And when I say ownership, there is a myth that the disaster offices in the respective countries are singularly responsible for disaster management in the entire country. Yes, we have a very important function, but the responsibility resides with every single citizen. And so those that live in vulnerable areas need to be aware of their vulnerability. They also need to be aware of the specific areas where they can seek shelter in terms of safety from tsunami impacts. And as a child said to me some time ago, you need to know the shortest and fastest route to get to those locations. There is another challenge, and that is, I do not think we have dealt with very well. How do we move people in large numbers, especially those that are differently able? And so that is a challenge we have examined and are taking some steps to address. Presently, we have schools that are in impacted zones, we have clinics, we have utility companies, we have desalination plants, we have hotels, and the list go on and on and on. The solution to making these facilities less vulnerable in some cases would require us moving them out of harm's way. In some cases, there are advances made in terms of science and how you can apply science in the built industry to reduce some of these risks. And so the solution really is a combination of things that we'll need to do. The government, in my view, should be leading the way. However, the private sector should be a very close and supporting partner in this process. Civil society need to become, in my view, a little louder. They are either too comfortable or too timid. And so they need to be able to stand up and speak up where these matters are concerned, so that both private sector and government will understand, look, this is something that is important and that we need to deal with it. I do not believe the Caribbean countries have all of the resources required, and perhaps would not have all the resources required in a short period of time. And so we're going to have to be very strategic in terms of our planning and our implementation of the reduction of this specific risk. The disaster risk reduction component of development don't necessarily have the same window of opportunity as climate change. And therefore, countries will have to consider how they utilize the climate change risk reduction approaches, since there are some resources available there. But more specifically, I think we have to look again at public sector investment. Governments spend quite a bit of money annually for public sector investment, specifically for capital projects. And we would want to see how best we can build resilience into this process, and to make a very deliberate effort to build with risk reduction for tsunamis and other hazards into taxpayers' funding. I'm going to use that term deliberately. If we're able to do that, initially I suspect there's going to be some challenges because it's something unusual. But once we get started and we're able to quantify the benefits, I think we won't have a choice but to continue that process. Some of the challenges we're going to face up front is that in some cases you have single state agencies responsible for the development process. The need for greater collaboration across the board is going to be one issue that we'll have to address. And that, in my view, may be the single most important challenge, because these agencies are accustomed to operating in silos for a very long time and may see the greater good of greater collaboration as an intrusion on their space, so to speak. But I think once we are able to get this process moving, it will result in a greater benefit for all of us.